What's up, y'all? We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. We've got a lot to get into on today's show. We're going to touch back on a little bit what we talked about on Wednesday, which is the odd dynamics we have with regional rivalries at the moment. Vic Lombardi commented on, ranted on, I guess I should say, in an epic way about Rick George comments about wanting to play Nebraska annually. He talks about the importance of CSU and CU playing annually for the state. We're going to play that later on in the show. I'm going to highlight some Rams who have the best opportunity to get recognized on the preseason all-conference team that comes out next week. I'll be out in Vegas for media days. I will have some fun, unique content coming your way next week as well. And at the end, we'll get into pretenders and contenders. I'll just kind of talk about the teams that I view as the most legitimate contenders, some teams who have a strong chance to have solid seasons, but I don't really view as, a championship caliber tier. And then we'll get into, some of the wild cards, some of the teams who should be at the bottom of the league, all of that fun stuff here. Just briefly at the beginning, we're going to touch on Nique Clifford's Summer League debut. He and Zay played for the Kings last night in a win over the Magic. Nique tied for a team-high 17 points in the 84-81 win over the Magic, had a dunk in the final minute that put Sacramento up a couple of possessions. I'm not going to get too carried away with my Summer League analysis. I just think that for a lot of reasons, you'd be flawed with your reasoning to do so. It's just not good structured basketball. There's a lot of guys just basically going out and trying to make plays. It's not that different from like a rec scenario, to be honest. As it progresses, as they get used to each other out there, you start to see them figure out some things. And I thought Sacramento played better in the second half. I thought Nique looked better in the second half than he did in the first half. But I think if you were watching this game and you're hoping that he's going to be able to translate at the NBA level, you should come away encouraged with this performance. He flashed everything that he's going to be able to do in terms of getting to the rim. He got to the free throw line a lot, 6 of 10 at the lines. He'd like him to be a little bit more consistent there, but I'm sure there's some nerves. It's his first pro game. That's inevitable. 4 rebounds, 3 assists, couple of steals, had a block. He had a big 3 over Tristan da Silva. Again, had that dunk late. And one of the things my good friend Steve Ivey pointed out on Twitter, sharing that highlight this morning, you could just see Nique's mentality out there. He's a total pro, puts him up with a big jam in the last minute. It's a tight back and forth game. He's not out there pounding his chest. He's not celebrating. He just gets back on defense. And I really think that mature mentality that Nique has shown these last couple of years is going to be one of his strongest assets at the next level. I just think he's basically been a pro for a few years now with the way that he's approached the game, and he's shown great improvement, and it's just exciting to see it all kind of come to fruition here in the NBA. Isaiah Stevens had 2 points, 1 of 6 from the floor in 16 minutes. He's going to have to shoot the ball with more consistency if he's going to get consistent playing time, but they did give him a 2-way deal, which is encouraging. So, we should get to see more of Nique and Isaiah together, both in the Summer League and hopefully at some point on the regular roster in the regular season as well. We have some photos here from our guy RG. He and the Nuggets guys are out at Summer League in Vegas. Nique with the Kings, which is cool to see him in that uniform. Cool to see him and Isaiah together, especially. I mean, how can you not love that as a Ram fan? Obviously, if you're listening on the audio only side, you're a little bit SOL when it comes to the photos. Do we have the clip of him throwing down that dunk as well? Yeah, I mean, nice baseline jam, goes strong to the hoop, throws it down, and look, just gets back on defense. isn't out there showboating, trying to make a big deal of it. It was a big bucket. They needed it, helped them secure the win. But that's what Nique does. He approaches the game like a pro. Really excited to see how all this plays out. Excited to have a little bit of summer league action to watch over the next week or so. It's pretty grim on the sports calendar. As somebody who writes the daily newsletter, which is everything about Denver sports in less than 5 minutes, you can subscribe at newsletter.dnvr.com. I can only talk about the Rockies so much, like especially with their struggles. Fortunately, the Avs had a signing in Josh Manson. It's technically a contract extension, but something to talk about. But I have gotten a little bit of juice out of this New York Times top 100 rivalries ranking in college football. On Wednesday, I kind of ranted about how I felt like 91 was pretty disrespectful for the Rocky Mountain Showdown on this list, just based on some of the games that they had listed above it. It was a lot of Power Four conference games, but it was a lot of their like third, fourth, fifth, sixth most like desired wins from a fan's perspective. To me, a rivalry game is the type of game that defines your season. When you win it, it carries you for a year. When you lose, it's just devastating. And the juice that the Rocky Mountain Showdown has had in recent years has been next level. I mean, it's been closer to what it was when I was growing up, when you had some of those epic matchups at Mile High, the head spike with BVP. Even some of those games that they lost were still really, really competitive. 2003, they lose 42-35 to Joel Klatt, and it was a shootout in BVP's senior season, unfortunately. Lost to CU and Wyoming his senior year. Tough way for a CSU legend to go out after an awesome career. 05, Crosby kicks the 50-something yarder in like the last minute. 04, the Marcus Houston game. I mean, there were so many epic matchups. The matchup at the height of the rivalry, in the late 90s, early 2000s, was a game that mattered a lot nationally. These were teams that were consistently in the top 25. They were programs that factored into the national conversation. And obviously, throughout the 2000s, that changed a little bit. Both programs struggled significantly from like 2006 through 2012-ish were particularly bleak. But it was not a fun stretch. And the game, it was annual, but it was a lot of bad matchups between bad teams. And even though it was still always fun, the matchup definitely lost some juice. I can admit that. McElwain comes in, makes it interesting. He wins twice in 3 years, loses a competitive game in the other one. Bobo had a chance in 2015, but blows the game. They lose in overtime by 3 in a game they had like 3 blocked field goals. Really frustrating way to go down. And from there, he didn't have much more success. You can, talk about the offensive PI in 2017. Whatever the fact of the matter is CU has obviously significantly had the upper hand in the all-time series, and especially of late, they've been on a nice stretch here. It hasn't been what you would want, if you're a CSU supporter. Obviously, they've got to find a way to pull out some of these games, but I just get really frustrated with how the Buffs fan base tends to talk down to CSU fans about this matchup, particularly when you're clamoring for an annual matchup with Nebraska, whose series history is just as lopsided. Like, they've owned that matchup. I get it's been more competitive in the 21st century. A lot of those wins, come before the 80s especially, but there's a lot of wins that CU fans like to brag about pre-80s as well. They didn't play as consistently in the 80s really until the mid-90s when Sonny comes into the picture. Then you have a nice stretch there of like 2 decades where you play every year. To me, this game is big because it benefits the whole state. And I really feel like Vic Lombardi hit the nail on the head here. And I know it's going to upset some CU fans, and I'm sure there'll be some snarky comments. Shout out Cam Duncan. I'm sure I'll see you in the comments after the fact. But, Vic really got intense here, and he's a CU supporter even. Like, that's the thing that I think some of the more passionate Buffs fans who want to view CU as something greater than they currently are, you got to recognize where you're at in the grand scheme of things as well. And this is a game that generates a ton of traction. It generates a ton of buzz locally. It generates a ton of excitement. I mean, I think you could sell 80,000 at Mile High if you were playing it in Denver right now, with how into the rivalry folks have been of late. Obviously, the Dion Norvell stuff has really poured some some gasoline on this, but I mean, you've averaged 6 million TV viewers too. It's not like there isn't a business sense in all of this either. It's not some charity type matchup. But here is Vic Lombardi rambling on Lombardi, Mosier, and Kane. Great show on Altitude Radio, one of my favorite radio programs in Denver. And I just could not agree with him more. Make sure you guys check out their radio show. But here is Vic saying what a lot of folks are too afraid to say on the CU supporter side.
The CSU game is important because it feeds two people, the CU and the CSU fan. The CU game I understand. With Nebraska, I understand the history. I live the history of that rivalry. Yep. I get it. But they're in separate conferences now. The game is not as meaningful anymore. It just isn't. The CSU-CU game is not only meaningful, it's more meaningful than ever. That needs to stay. They need to find a way. And I don't want to hear CU fans saying, well, it's not worth it to us, blah, blah, blah. Yes, it is. It's very much worth it to you.
Well,
because guess what? The week of that game, we talk on these microphones, and everybody starts talking about the game more so than any other game on the schedule.
Do you think Rick George thinks that way? Or does he
I don't care what. Hey, listen, let me go on. I don't care what Rick George thinks.
What he says. Okay, but
I don't care.
I'm asking,
if Rick George thinks that CU's too good for CSU, that's his opinion.
I don't know.
Prime time.
I don't know if he thinks they're too good, but I think college athletics now is all about making money, and he probably sees the Nebraska game as a bigger moneymaker.
And it is.
Sure.
It is.
But you asked which game.
No, I understand.
You're not asking us about money.
That's why I was asking about
if it's all bottom line stuff, then.
That's what I was saying from Rick George perspective. Like he said that about Nebraska, not CSU. I mean, CSU was right there on the table for him, too, to say, yeah, we should play them every year. He didn't. So his thought is probably if we play Nebraska, it's going to be primetime TV. It's maybe big noon kickoff for college game days there. You know, that sort of thing is probably what he's thinking.
Let me preface this by saying I'm a CU guy. I attended CU a year. My kids went to CU. My brothers CU, right? I can't stand it when you CU people get so arrogant about this subject. I'm watching the Twitch feed right now. Oh, CU's not good enough. CU's not. You don't get it. You don't. Who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah.
Do you think you're Alabama?
Yeah.
Remember who you are. Remember who you are. Oh, okay, Prime's back. You're back in the national picture. So what? Who do you think you're not challenging for a national championship this year? You're not in that category. Again, who do you think you are, CU? You're not too good for CSU. Never have been, never will be.
All right, first off, love Vic's energy there. Again, great radio show. Check it out. Mosier, Lombardi, and Kane, Altitude Radio 92.5 FM. I've been on the show once or twice over the years, listened to it frequently. I don't think you could say it any more accurately than how Vic, put things there. And I honestly, I think CU and Nebraska should play every year too. To me, it should be that simple. That's one of the things I wrote about in the newsletter today. Like, I'm not even trying to come at this from an antagonistic point of view. Like, yes, it's very easy for me to lean into that energy, especially when the Buffs fans start puffing their chest out and getting high and mighty and acting pretentious and talking down. It's easy for me to point out you've won one conference championship in the 30 years I've been on this planet, haven't won a bowl game in 2 decades, obviously have dominated CSU historically, but it's the same deal with CU Nebraska. And I guess I would say to those Buffs fans who are inevitably going to show up in the comments, who are going to come at me on Twitter and mock me and with the little bro crap and all of that, who benefits here? Who benefits? There's no CSU-CU game on the schedule for the next 4 years. There's not currently any CU Nebraska games on the books. So you just play none of your rivals. And when Rick George a couple years ago came out and said, it's not going to be an annual game anymore because we're going to go schedule these high-profile matchups. I understand they brought Texas A&M onto Mile High the one time. Since then, you've gotten swept by Air Force and you're going to play Wyoming this year. Is that the higher-profile game that you guys were desiring so much? I keep coming back to who wins here, because it's not the fans, not the people in the stands that have been here year after year, who are going to be here long after these players, coaches, everything changes. It doesn't benefit any of us, the people who live and breathe this shit. I get disappointed by it. We've lost so much tradition in college football, and I think if we're not careful, man, one of these days we're going to look up and just not recognize it anymore. I get that, CSU has not lived up to the potential, from a competitive standpoint, as consistently over the last 15 years. But again, I come back to kind of what Vic said, which is, well, who do you think you are, CU? Like, neither of us are too good for each other. As a state, we all benefit from this game. It's more fun for everyone. It's more exciting for everyone. And again, an average of 6 million viewers on TV the last couple of years, it's not bad business either. I wish that common sense could prevail in this conversation, and that it could be as simple as, hey, why don't we just play the games that the fans want us to play? I'm sure you can make a couple more million playing another Power 4 program, but at the end of the day, do you feel about it the way you feel when that, energy and that buzz and the build up for the showdown gets going? I mean, the energy that we had for that game, with it finally being on campuses these last couple of years, it was incredible. Like, I will say it is a disappointment in a sense that you can't get as many people into the building. Just Mile High obviously is going to hold twice as many people. But I mean, it was unreal. Why would you not want to lean into that? Why would you not want to play every year? Neither of us have factored into the conversation nationally in a really long time. Not legitimately. I understand there's been a lot of buzz with the CU program. They've gotten a lot of attention under the Deion Sanders era, but substantially, it's been 2+ decades since either of these teams really factored in on a national level. There's been, a drop in the cup here and there. 2016 with CU, 2014 with CSU, but outside of an outlier season here or there, these programs are a long ways away from their high point. And I just feel like this game played annually, with the attention that it generates and with the excitement and the buzz, it's a situation where, these tides can raise, all ships here. Like, maybe you truly don't care. Like, I will say that's one of the things that's always been frustrating for me, is that there's a lack of acknowledgement of the advantage that CU's always had by, being in the Big Eight. Look at Kansas and Kansas State, Iowa and Iowa State. They've always been together, just fortunately. What if CSU and CU had always been in the same conference? That's something I'm going to talk about next week, actually. But I don't know. I loved that rant from Vic there. I don't think anybody that's on the more neutral side of things would disagree with him. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm a CSU guy. I want the game to happen. CSU benefits from it. But I would argue CU benefits from it too. Maybe not nationally, but the less you play the game, the less buzz it's going to have nationally. That's the thing about CU Nebraska. It's still as relevant as ever locally. When they played, it was exciting. It was fun. But as Vic said, now that they're not in the same conference, now that they're not playing every year, the game doesn't mean what it meant on a national level. Because you've had the Deion J drama, I think the showdown has mattered more nationally. That's just my opinion. Again, I am biased. But I love that somebody like Vic is willing to go out on a limb and say it, because there's a lot of people in the Denver media sphere who just kiss the ring and are more than willing to, just take the easy route here, which is to, say what the regime wants you to say. Don't get too critical. Don't speak out against it. But I mean, Vic's a Denver media legend. Like, what are you going to do? Let's take a quick break. Let's regroup. I don't want to make the whole show about this, but I really did love that rant. Awesome stuff from Moser, Lombardi, and Kane. If you're looking for banking that plays at your pace, whether you're tailgating, grabbing halftime snacks, or catching the game from the couch, First Bank is in your corner with their secure, easy-to-use mobile banking app. You can check your balance, split the tab for stadium nachos, stay on top of your money anytime, anywhere. It's like having a financial MVP right in your pocket. Here's the play that pays. You could earn $300 when you open a new First Bank checking account. Use it to score tickets to the Avs, to the Rockies, to the Nuggets, to CSU, whatever keeps your game day going strong. First Bank makes managing your money feel like a win, no games, just tools to help you stay in control right from your phone. If you're ready to take your banking game to the next level, head to efirstbank.com/bonus. That's efirstbank.com/bonus. Certain restrictions and requirements apply. Member FDIC. I also want to talk to you about Cake Mortgage. Cake is the business owner's home mortgage partner. They solve a lot of problems for independent contractors, to creative professionals, contractors, tech entrepreneurs. If you're in any of those industries where you're self-employed, it can be a challenge to get approved for loans. It's tough to prove your income. If you're a regular employee of a company, you get a W-2. It shows on your tax return. Traditional lenders love this because it's simple. They don't have to work hard. You don't have to work hard to get the loan. It's an easy and simple process. It's more complicated for business owners, but by maximizing legitimate business deductions and expenses, business owners can reduce their taxable income, keep more money in the business. That means their tax returns show little income. Most lenders don't love it. They can help you with this. They can help you get approved by validating your cash flow through bank statements, certified profit and loss statements, or business tax returns. Check out the link in our description to get started. Cake Mortgage Corporation, equal housing lender, NMLS number 1734623, licensed in Colorado by the Division of Real Estate. Terms and conditions do apply. Every time I read the NMLS number, I panic a little bit, and I kind of half forget how to read and do math and look at numbers. All right, as Ram Hill says in the Toyota chat, the CU Twitter warriors really love your posts. I'm not getting very many Christmas cards from the cult of Dion, that is for certain. Mile High Minute wants to know, should colleges consider less conference games in order to make it easier to schedule non-conference rivalry games? That's an interesting thought. I think most leagues are actually going the opposite way. They're moving more towards the 9-game conference model and 3 non-conference games, because the leagues that tend to control everything, the SEC, the Big Ten, they hold all the power. They believe they're better off just playing each other. There is probably some validity to that now that they've made the super leagues. But I do think, if you're the Big 12, if you're the Pac-12, even the ACC, it's an interesting thought, so long as, both parties are willing to partake. And that's the ultimate challenge right now. And the weird dynamic is, you've got, CU and CU, I've talked about the circle of hate in college football before. Like, if you start at the bottom, you can just work your way all the way up. You could do it in any type of rivalry, but Wyoming considers CSU to be its biggest rival. I too consider Wyoming to be CSU's biggest rival, but a lot of people consider CU to be CSU's biggest rival. CU thinks they're too big for CSU, and they think Nebraska is their biggest rival, but Nebraska thinks Oklahoma is their biggest rival, and Oklahoma thinks they're too good for Nebraska, and Texas is their biggest rival. It just goes on and on. A&M, like you could do it a million different ways, but really, the only people who end up losing out in this situation are the fans, are the players who don't get opportunities to play in these great games. Like, we're going to go 4 seasons now without CSU and CU playing. I don't think that's what the players want. I don't think it's what the majority of the fans in the stands want. Maybe some of the vocal Twitter warriors, maybe, they like this, but I just don't think really anybody is going to benefit in any of this in the end. And 2026 and 2027 could be really weird. I still think CSU and Wyoming will probably find a way to make that game work. Not 100%, especially just given everything that's going on with the Pac-12 Mountain West stuff. Everybody's kind of preoccupied at the moment. They've got a lot going on. But I know that keeping that continuous streak going is important to both schools. They've been playing continuously since the mid-40s. There have been very few gaps since these teams started playing back in the late 1890s. And now there's a possibility that in 2026 and 2027, because of realignment, that we won't have a border war. We won't have a Rocky Mountain Showdown. We won't have CU Nebraska. Who is this good for at the end of the day? Like, what college football fans benefit from this? Maybe some TV execs somewhere are getting bigger paychecks by scheduling some of these random matchups, but like CU, they're playing a good team in Georgia Tech this year. That's a good game. It's an intriguing game. You're probably going to be underdogs in it because Georgia Tech's going to be pretty good. Would you rather play that game than the showdown? I don't think so. Maybe you would, But like for me, I'd rather be playing the showdown than Washington State or Washington, just being real. Like I would absolutely rather play that. And I think that's how most fans feel. I know that most of the decisions that are made when it comes to college football now are all about the bottom line. It's all about dollars and business and keeping pace in the modern arms race. But it is a shame that like the people who truly get punished all this, the people who lose out the most are those of us that truly love college football and are sitting here on a Friday in early July, debating about all this because we love this. This is what we do. And I wish there were more people who viewed the game like we do, who were true fans of the sport and wanted what was best for college football as a whole, not just necessarily what's best for their individual, institution. Because you got to remember all these people, and CSU's no different. Like I'm not trying to claim CSU's completely innocent in all of this, but all these schools, like they operate the same way politicians do. It's not about the greater good. It's about whatever their own agenda is and getting their own bonuses and doing whatever is best to push what is best for them individually, not necessarily what's best for the alumni base, what's best for the fans, the people who support you and make all this possible. But it is what it is. It is what it is. That's my thoughts on all of it. Taylor says in the Toyota chat, I would be happy with CU, Wyoming, UNC, Greeley being our non-conference games almost every year. I'd be fine with that too. Playing Greeley every single year doesn't make you stoked or anything like that. But if you are going to play an FCS game, why not? You're already going to have a couple of tough non-conference matchups and true rivalry games in the years you do play Wyoming and CU. And honestly, in good conscience, I can't sit up here and get it on my soapbox about how CU and CSU playing is good for the whole state and then not give, a team like UNC a chance to get in the mix as well. CU should throw them a bone every now and then too. They have their own hurdles already. They don't got lights in their facility. You're in the Big Sky, which is basically the SEC of SCS football. And they're so far down the totem pole in that league. It's rough. CD Sticks says, the cult of Dion has ruined the rivalry for me. It used to be fun to hate CU, but now I just want to avoid anything to do with them altogether. Rivalries are just about respect. I do get what you're saying there, to be honest. Obviously, I deal with a lot of noise online, a lot of trolls. Some of it is my own doing. I know what, if I'm stirring the pot, if I'm asking for it, I can't throw a fit when, it then comes back at me. And that's happened this week, and I knew what I was doing. I was fine with that. But it has gotten real nasty. And I mean, like the aftermath of the Blackburn stuff and just how just real overboard it all became so quickly. I do think there's some truth to that. And maybe having a year or two off is good to let things cool down in that sense. I don't think there was quite as much of that in 2025. I also think it's just really easy for some of these loudmouths behind anonymous profiles who've never been to the state, will never step foot in Boulder or Fort Collins, for them to spout off and just say some really horrific stuff. I've definitely seen some creative insults. We'll put it that way. I've been called things these last couple of years from the Dion fans that I've never even remotely experienced prior to that. CSU Wyoming can be pretty bitter, can be pretty nasty at times, but I do think there is a little bit more shared respect there. There certainly is on my side. I'm obviously big into the border war. I love the history. I think it's a top 25 rivalry in college football. I think the uniqueness of it is incredible. I love the way we're intertwined with each other, not just from a football sense, but the way our communities are connected. Like 287, like we all live our everyday lives running into each other, and that's what makes that rivalry matter so much. It's so passionate. That's the stuff we lose, like in all of this realignment stuff. And obviously, I support CSU's move to the Pac-12. You couldn't stay pat in a league that was going to be losing some of its top members just for the sake of staying with Wyoming. CSU and Wyoming have been in different leagues before. They still played. There's a desire on both sides to continue playing all of that. But going back to what you said about the nastiness, spoiling some of the fun for you, I do understand where you're coming from. And I would implore everybody to always remember at the end of the day, like it is just a game and it's teenagers playing that game at that. Like don't let it make you say something you would regret. You know, we're all passionate about this. We all live this. We're all intense supporters of our schools and communities and programs, and it's great. It's what makes all this fun. But there's definitely a line that can be easily crossed, and it happens pretty frequently. All right, let's take a quick break here. We've already stretched this topic longer than I intended. Let's talk about some of the Rams who have a good chance to receive some postseason recognition. But I love the interaction, so keep the questions and comments in the Toyota chat rolling. And if that ends up being most of the show, that's fine with me. I love you guys rocking with us. Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. If you're looking for some gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. Start your order and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel that you need. They've got a partnership with Colorado State as part of their on-campus collection. They've got a really cool mix of CSU hats. I've got a couple coming. I'm excited. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Guys, it's smelly season. You got to put the deodorant on. Mando's a men's deodorant brand. They're hyper-focused on keeping every aspect of a man's body smelling fresh and clean. They mean every aspect. This isn't just your standard, underarm deodorant. This is full body deodorant. You can put it anywhere that's a stench zone. We're talking your armpits, but also, your butt, your balls, your grundle. Take a shot, everyone. Their scents are geared towards men with options like Bourbon Leather, Cloverwoods, Mount Fuji, and Pro Sport. Again, don't ruin everybody's vibe with your smelly self. This was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And with Mando's starter pack, it's a great way for new customers to try out everything they have to offer. Not only do you get solid stick deodorant and cream tube deodorant, but you get 2 free products of your choice. They've got mini body wash, deodorant wipes, all kinds of great stuff, plus free shipping. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off that starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use the code DNVR at shopmando.com. That's DNVR at shopmando.com. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier. Boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. Spence says, I blame the NFL for all of this. I assume you mean like the realignments and the mess that it's kind of created and the NFLification, if that makes sense, of college football. Taylor in the Toyota chat says, we have a 3-game stretch in 28 to BYU, Wyoming, and CU. That will be a fun 3 weeks of trash talk and anticipation. Yeah, it'll be a little throwback, a little taste of my childhood. The CSU BYU, it wasn't on par with like BYU Utah, and even BYU Wyoming were more significant rivals just because those teams were a lot better in like the 60s, 70s, 80s. There was a lot of history there. But BYU, man, they were fun to root against, and the Mountain West losing them was a bummer because I think if we just could have got them to stick around, especially adding, Boise and some of those other schools, it would have been cool to see that dynamic. CD Stick says the Bears might be bad, but I do love watching a game or two in Greeley every year if I can. I always root for UNC. I actually think this is completely random and off topic here, but since the NCAA video games have been such a big discussion point of late, now we've got the basketball game coming back. I do think that UNC would be one of the more fun programs to build up on an NCAA video game. On the basketball side, I mean, they've had some legit talent that's come through there in recent years. And you think about Dalton Connect as the obvious one, but I mean, St. Thomas and some of those other dudes, they could play. They've lost a lot of really talented players to the portal. But yeah, let's get into some CSU players that are going to have an opportunity to receive postseason or preseason recognition of the postseason awards. I'm going to talk about who I think are the candidates for the offensive and defensive players of the year. We're going to get into some pretenders and contenders for the Mountain West. Obviously, it's the preseason. A lot of this can change, but I'm just going to kind of give my general outlook of the conference going into the year, starting with the Rams that have the best chance to be on the preseason all-conference team. I've talked about this before, but I submitted my ballot I don't know, about a week and a half ago. It's not like as simple as I just write out whoever I want. Every team submits various players for the positions, and then you rank it like based on, who you think is most deserving. Quarterback, you just put one. Running back, you put your top two. Receivers, your top three. Tight ends, one. Linemen, you pick your top five. D linemen, etc. But I just wanted to explain that for context. There have been years where there were guys I had on my plan going in who don't even end up on the ballot for whatever reason. And sometimes that's just an oversight, or maybe it's the school not including them because they know something we don't, like they're going to leave or they're injured or something like that. But if there's somebody you think got shafted, there's always a possibility that they weren't on the ballot in the first place. Just wanted that to be known, how the process works. I guess I can go through my ballot. I don't think there's any rules against it or anything like that. I try my best to be as fair with this as I can. Obviously, I'm a CSU guy at heart, so I do like it when Rams get recognition. But it's an honor to me to be included in this process, and it's something I take seriously. I try and be fair. I try not to be a total homer, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, yes, if it's a 50-50, it comes down to CSU and another guy, probably going to give the Ram the edge, knowing that the local beat for the other guy probably did the exact same thing. But it's not just going to be like me being yeah CSU, Rams are the greatest. I'm just not going to do it. Quarterback, I did vote Maddox Madsen, preseason all conference. I think he led the league in passing yards, passing touchdowns last year. They won the league. Just in principle, I think he had to get it. That said, I didn't vote for him for Offensive Player of the Year in the preseason. I think he'll probably win if I had to guess. My only question is maybe him and Sire Gaines end up splitting each other's votes. I voted for Jaden Thomas, the UNLV running back. I think they're really going to lean hard on him. And I just thought that out of all the skill guys, I liked him the most. It was really weird looking at the lack of returning talent the league has at receivers. Like Latrell Caples is back at Boise. Hawaii's got a couple of guys I like. There's some up and comers at CSU, but it's not like it had been there for a couple years where you had Torrey Horton and Ricky White and some legitimate star power across the board at receiver. It's a lot of unproven guys going into the year. BFN, I do think will receive some votes. I don't think he'll be preseason all conference if I had to guess. Most of the national pundits, they have him third or fourth team behind Maddox Madsen and Walker Eget of San Jose State. If San Jose State throws the ball around as much as they did this past season, I could see a situation where Eget was the Offensive Player of the Year. I'm skeptical of them being able to replicate the success that they had in the passing offense without Nick Nash. They brought over some intriguing guys through the portal. A lot of these teams that are picked in the top half of the league are going to be very dependent on portal additions on both sides of the ball. I guess that's just modern college football. But I think Maddox Madsen's the easy choice for who's going to be the preseason all-conference pick at quarterback. Running back, two guys get honored. There it gets a little bit more interesting. Obviously, if I've got Jaden Thomas as the Offensive Player of the Year, I've got him preseason all-conference. But like from Boise's standpoint, I wonder, do Sire Gaines and Malik Sherrod, how much do they split each other's stats? Could that open up a possibility for somebody like Justin Marshall to have a big year? But I mean, he could be in a very similar spot. I think it's going to be a running back by group type approach. Humphrey at New Mexico is a stud. He was an FCS star. Basically all of New Mexico's key players this year were. I'm going to be very interested to see how all of that plays out. But I mean, Donaldson at Fresno State could be in the mix. But Marshall was who CSU submitted on the ballot. And I thought that was interesting because if you read the Phil Steele preview, it's very clear that Norvell talked up Lloyd Avant, the Tulsa transfer, in a major way. He had him as his fourth team preseason all-conference running back, not Marshall, not Jalen Dupree. He also had him as a kick returner. So that makes it seem like in the conversation that they had, Norvell made it pretty clear they're excited about what they have in him. I was impressed by what I saw in the spring. Any of those CSU running backs, in theory, could be in the mix, though. Marshall, Dupree, Avant, whoever ends up pulling away and kind of establishing themselves as the number one guy, I think all are going to get consistent touches. But whoever that lead horse ends up being, they should be in the mix there. But Boise's got the best backfield in the conference. Carson of Air Force is a stud. Dylan Carson, he's back. He's a guy who you could see being a 1,000-yard rusher, double-digit rushing touchdowns, definitely be in the mix for all-conference recognition as well. The guy I think that has the best chance offensively to be first team is probably right tackle or left tackle Aaron Karras. Had played right tackle. I think he'll be at left this year, though we'll kind of see how that all plays out. Now I'm second guessing myself on that. Anyways, him or Morley, I think they've got a good chance to be in the mix. Defensively, Joaquez Evans, who comes over from Baylor, short stint at Baylor after starring at Western Kentucky. He played really well under Tyson Summers there a couple years ago. I actually voted for him to be the preseason defensive player of the year. That's how much of an impact I think he can make as a pass rusher. I think the Rams are going to play very aggressive, and it's probably going to be a little bit all over the place in terms of the results that it produces. When you pressure as much as they do, it can put the corners on an island. You're going to give up some big plays, but you're also, hopefully, going to generate some havoc and then create some chaos, get after the QB more, create some more turnovers, all of that stuff. For better or for worse, they're going to be far more aggressive on the defensive side of the ball, but I do think that behooves some of the pass rushers and gives them a nice opportunity here to ultimately, be in the mix for all conference, Mountain West Player of the Year, all of that fun stuff. I'm really high on Evans. I think he can be one of the more impactful transfers that CSU's had in the Norvell era. Owen Long could be somebody that ends up on the preseason all conference team. I'm really high on him. I think he's a star. I think he'll be on the all conference team. I don't think he's going to get the recognition in the preseason. I just don't think a lot of those guys are going to do the deep dive into how good he really is. But Isaiah Hankins, the Baylor transfer kicker, he could be preseason all conference just based on the success that he's had over his career. The San Diego State kicker, I'm drawing a blank on his name. He's a stud too, so it wouldn't surprise me if he's in the mix. But those are kind of the guys I would say: BFN, Marshall / the running backs, Aaron Karras, Tanner Morley, Evans, Long, and Hankins. Those are the guys I would say have the best opportunity to be on the preseason all-conference team. As far as who will be the front runners for offensive and defensive player of the year, again, I do think Madsen will probably be the guy that gets the most votes and ends up being the Mountain West preseason offensive player of the year. I think Boise is going to be the preseason pick to win the league. I believe they have been every single year that they've ever been in the conference. There have been times where I've rolled my eyes at that and pushed back at it and said, you're going off brand recognition. They do lose Gianti, which is significant, but they return a lot of starters on both sides of the ball. They're still going to be a really good football team, and they still got a really good backfield. But I do think it'll be Madsen, quarterback of the perceived favorite, is usually going to get that recognition outside of a generational talent and somebody like GNT. But I mean, even when you think back to, what was that, 2021, Trey McBride, everybody knew he was absurd. Everybody knew how good he was, won the freaking Mackey Award, and he still didn't win Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year. It went to Carson Strong. So it just tends to be a quarterback award at the end of the day. I do think Braden is in that conversation if he elevates his game to a place that I think he can reach. I think he's got all the arm talent in the world. I think they're going to open up the offense, which is going to give him an opportunity. Obviously, it's on him to go out and seize that moment. But if CSU is as good of a team as I think that they can be, I don't think they're going to win double-digit games or anything like that, but I do think 8+ is certainly within reach. I do think that BFN will be in that conversation. And if he throws, for 4,500 yards and 25+ touchdowns and CSU wins, 8-9 games, he's going to be in that conversation. Walker Eget, I do think, is going to put up big numbers. Are they able to be as explosive and consistent as they were with Nick Nash last year? We shall see. One of the things that's going to really benefit San Jose State, though, is the schedule. They don't have to play UNLV or Boise State, get to avoid two of the better teams, two of the better defenses. That's going to help their opportunity to have a successful season, and obviously for him to put up some big numbers. Jaden Thomas, UNLV, I picked him. Obviously, he was second team all-conference last year. I think Sire Gaines of Boise's got to be in the conversation. I guess technically you could put Humphrey of New Mexico in this mix. I think talent-wise, he's as good as any back in the league. But how good is New Mexico ultimately is going to be a big factor in this. And then just out of respect, I did put John Michael Gillenborg. I've heard it pronounced both ways. He's a stud. I'm actually happy that he stayed at Wyoming. Obviously, that's going to be tough for CSU and for the league. But that's a guy that could start anywhere in the country. And for him to stick around, given the struggles Wyoming's had post-bowl, I think it's admirable. I wish more guys were loyal to their program that way. And again, he's really good. I'm intrigued by Wyoming. I think they'll be significantly better than what we saw a year ago. We'll talk about that here in just a second. I'll give out a couple more names to keep an eye on the defensive side, and then we'll get into those pretenders and contenders. If you have any questions, comments, etc., throw them our way in the Toyota chat. I'll get to as many as I can. If I don't get to it right away, we can star it and come back full circle at the end. Trucks have always been a part of Toyota's DNA. For generations, Toyota's built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you. Check out the all-new Tacoma. The Land Cruiser is iconic. Toyota offers 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Not to be outdone, though, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, let's go places. Just like your Rammies need a home field advantage, you need your home flooring advantage, and there's no better way to get that than with our friends at Empire Today. They can help you get the help you need. Empire Today has flooring experts, dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. I've joked about this, but I've been at Home Depot quite a bit of late as a first-time homeowner. A lot of the times, I'm hoping, I'm praying that the guy that's helping me actually knows what they're talking about. When you work with Empire Today, you're working with an expert. It's not some guy who might be on flooring this week, but he's going to be working in paint next week and lawn care after that. These are people whose lives are flooring. They're true experts at their craft. They live and breathe it, and they will help you every step of the way. It's just a whole different ball game. Their flooring experts bring the showroom right to your home. Their virtual floor designers, great way to see how any flooring will fit. Just snap a picture. Boom, it's that easy. Schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. DNVR listeners can get a $350 discount when using the promo code DNVR. You heard me right, a $350 discount with the code DNVR. Restrictions do apply. Visit EmpireToday/DNVR for full details. All right. Let's talk contenders. Let's talk pretenders. Benjamin says Boise State will be back-to-back Mountain West champs. I think they're the easy pick for sure. You look at their roster on paper, the returning talent that they have. Madsen coming back is big. Anytime you have a multi-year starting quarterback, that's a big feather in your cap. It's why I'm optimistic about CSU, despite some of the criticism that BFN gets. I just think having a third-year starting quarterback with that type of arm talent is inherently going to be an advantage for your offense and give you a better chance to contend. A guy that's experienced within his system compared to what most of the league is, which is kind of a hodgepodge of, island of misfit toys type scenario where you're just trying to bring in bodies and then hope that you get enough pieces together to make it work. Boise's going to be really good. And they've got a great offensive line. They return a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball. One of the guys who I think is firmly going to be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, along with cornerback Amarian McCoy. I think Morgan, Jaden Virgil Morgan, their linebacker, I believe leads the league in TFLs in terms of returners. He had a really strong season this past year. They're going to be tough. And from CSU standpoint, going to Boise and then hosting Air Force to close out the regular season is really tough. And I think if you were going to point as to why you should be skeptical of CSU's chances of potentially being a contender, the schedule being tougher than last year is a major factor in all that. I will say I personally am not quite as high on Fresno State or UNLV as the consensus seems to be. Phil Steele does seem to be more along my lines of thinking than a lot of the other national projections that I've seen to this point. But I don't view them as contenders. I think they're going to be good teams. I think UNLV especially probably has as much talent on paper as anybody, but their schedule is going to be tougher. And it's really hard to lose that much production, to have that little continuity and be able to maintain the same type of success. That's not to say that it's impossible. I just have my doubts going in, particularly with one of the tougher stretches of the schedule that they have. They start at Sam Houston, winnable game, UCLA at home. I think that's a winnable game. Idaho State, then at Miami of Ohio. But basically in a 5-week stretch, they go to Miami of Ohio. They have a bye week. Then they're at Wyoming, host Air Force, at Boise State. That's a really tough 5-week stretch. I think there's a possibility where, they have a couple of conference losses before we even get to November. And at that point, how realistic are they in the title race? I think anything more than 2 losses is all but guaranteed to eliminate you. I think you probably have to go at least 7-1 to, realistically feel good about your chances of making the title game. And just when I look at the schedule and when I look at so much unknown with that roster and needing so many different things to click right away for them to realistically be contenders, I just think they take a step back this year. I'm not saying the wheels fall off and they return to UNLV of, the mid 2000s or anything like that. I think like 8-9 wins is very much realistic for them. I think their non-conference schedule is actually less challenging than a year ago when they beat a couple of Big 12 teams on the road, which was really impressive. I just think maintaining that, given how many moving pieces they have, is going to be tough. Conversely, I have Air Force listed as a contender. I am much higher on them than the consensus. Part of that is due to the respect that I have for Troy Calhoun. They do have a tough schedule. They play Boise and UNLV, as does CSU. But it's a pretty reasonable schedule outside of that. If they could steal one of those, I think they're in a really good spot. And even if they lost both, there's a decent chance they could go 6-2. I mean, obviously, I'm hoping CSU wins that game at home, but the history, says that Air Force probably finds a way to pull it off, and they have a lot more continuity than they did a year ago. They closed the season strong. Their quarterback's back. Johnson, you got Carson in the backfield. They're solid in the trenches. I just think they're going to be tough, and basically, I will be in on Troy Calhoun. I will hold that stock until it's so far lost its value. I would just rather be late than the guy who gives up on them early, because I've seen this before, man. And it's classic Air Force storm brewing here. It's not going to be a bunch of flash or names that most people around the country are going to know, but you're going to look up and quietly they're going to have like a top 45 defense and an offense that scores like 30 a game, and Carson goes for like 1,500 on the ground. It would not shock me. It would not at all. I do think Air Force is a contender. I think you have to have them in that conversation. I put CSU in the contenders list just because in principle, I think with a third-year starting quarterback, a potential defensive player of the year candidate in Jaquez Evans, some of the other names, I know we didn't really focus on the defensive side as much. Trey White from San Diego State, sack master. He gets after the quarterback. San Diego State can have the team success. We shall see. Jordan Pollard is another guy, San Jose State linebacker, was first-team all-conference last year. I think he'll be in that mix, probably depending on team success. Him or Evans will be right there, I think, for Defensive Player of the Year, for, all conference recognition, all of that type of stuff. I am worried about the schedule, though, from CSU's standpoint. I just think that it's going to be a lot, and for them to make the title game, they're basically going to have to be perfect and find a way to do something that they haven't done historically, which is win in Boise, or beat multiple regional rivals multiple years in a row. It's been a long time since they've done that. There are a lot of Ram fans that are going to basically be in wait and see mode, and frankly, I can't tell anybody that they're wrong. I think there's realistic reason for optimism. I think from a talent and athleticism standpoint, this is the best roster that Jay's had. It's the biggest, strongest. I think it's the most diverse as well. Like, I love the tight end room, love the running backs, love the receiver room. No, you don't have a Torrey Horton, but I think top to bottom, they're in a really good place. And defensively, it's a lot of moving pieces. A lot of the things that I brought up about UNLV and unknown, I think you could say the same about CSU defensively. I do think they're better suited to play this aggressive style that Tyson Summers will coach than when he was here the first time in 2015. I just think they have better athletes, particularly in the trenches and out wide, to be able to fit this style and to be able to sustain it, which is just a really tough thing to do. Thought they did a nice job of bolstering the depth and getting enough bodies to give themselves a chance to play this way. If you're going to send that much pressure, you can't have guys playing 65 plus snaps a game. You've got to rotate. You need the bodies. I like everything on paper, but the history over the last 20 years says CSU finds a way to screw it up. And so if you're sitting here being like, yeah, I've heard it before, they're supposed to be good, I get it, because we've been in this position before. But it's a massive year for the Rams, obviously. I've said this a million times. I'm not going to do the rant again, but last year cannot be the ceiling. That's got to be the floor. It's got to be a launching point and not an arrival point. I put San Jose State in the Pretenders list, but I don't think that's the fairest way to phrase it. I mean, when you do this from a content standpoint, Contenders Pretenders, that sounds good. I think they're going to be a really good team, and I think the schedule is going to benefit them. But do I view them, even if they were to get to the title game, as somebody that could beat a Boise State? I just don't. And I think, Ken Nique did a great job in his first year there. I thought they embraced the talent on the roster really well. I just wonder, without Nick Nash, who was a beast, even though they did some decent work in the portal and brought some P4 guys in the receiving core, I have a hard time seeing it. I think they take a small step back. Similarly to what I said about UNLV, I've got Fresno on the Pretenders list simply because they seem to be getting a lot more love across the board than I would give them. I don't see it based on the amount of talent that they lost on both sides of the ball, particularly at the skill positions. They've got some guys on the defensive line on secondary that I like. Hamilton is a nice piece in the secondary. The former Texas kid, I'm trying to blank, in the trenches, he's really good. But you lose your quarterback, you lose all your leading receivers, you lose your running back. You've got a different coach, different system. I think they'll lean into that more North Dakota State brand of football, which I do think actually fits Fresno's identity. They've been a team that's kind of had some passing and flash to them, I guess, offensively over the last 15 years. You get like the Carr brothers and Keene was a stud there. And even before him, like Jay Kaner was the guy I loved watching. They've been a lot of fun. I think it'll be closer to like a Wyoming brand where we're going to be meat and potatoes, play physical defense. We're going to run the ball, try and control possession. But are they going to be able to do that to a point to where they're contending with like the Boise States of the world? That's hard for me to see at the moment. But that's just because it's a lot of unknown. I've got Hawaii and Wyoming listed as bowl teams. I think they'll be improved from a year ago. Hawaii's got to learn how to win a game on the road, which I think they have 2 road wins under Timmy Chang. They're frisky at home, as CSU experienced a couple years ago. Wyoming, I think, will be much improved. I like Caden Anderson under center. I think he's a step up from Svoboda. Jalen Sargent at receiver is a stud. They're going to be able to run the ball. Defensively, I do wonder if they take a step back. They've lost a lot of key pieces, especially in that front seven the last couple of years, and then even like in the secondary as well, with like Eckler, and some of those guys moving on. But I do think they'll be improved. I think they're a bowl team. I think 500 is a realistic a line for them to reach. Wildcard teams, Utah State and San Diego State, could see them win 8 games, could see them win 3. I think both are very realistic. San Diego State, I just have no idea what that's going to look like offensively. Utah State, I like Bryson Barnes as an athlete. Can Mendenhall design a scheme that takes advantage of his ability to extend the play, to run around, take advantage of his legs without getting him hurt? Do they have enough talent out wide? They've had some good receivers last couple of years. What's that going to look like? And as much as Barnes is a good scrambler, he ain't Devin Dampier either. So what does that look like? We shall see. Those are the wildcard teams to me. And then can they win 4? I've got Nevada and New Mexico. New Mexico I feel better about than Nevada, just based on the talent that Eck was able to add through the portal. I don't think Choate is going to be able to get it rolling at Nevada. I think it's just too many obstacles in his way. They don't have the funding. They don't have the facilities. It's tough. Anthony in the Toyota chat says San Jose State has damn near a cakewalk to the title game unless CSU and Boise both finish 7-1. Yeah, I mean, they lucked out not having to play Boise or UNLV, but obviously we saw that with CSU last year, and they found a way to mess up the Fresno game. Could San Jose State do something similar? Yeah, could they stumble? They got to go to Wyoming, to Utah State. Those are 2 tough places to play. They get Hawaii and Air Force at home. Nevada, San Diego State, not a brutal road slate. But Wyoming and Utah, going to Logan and Laramie, either of those could get a little murky for you. CD Stick says there seems to be a lot of faith in Orji being able to throw consistently. We'll see, right? Alex Orji certainly did not show it at Michigan. We shall see. Ben says CSU still on the rise. They have a brighter future now than they've had in my lifetime. I mean, things were going pretty good under McElwain, especially once they got the momentum for the on-campus stadium pass. They just didn't capitalize on that moment, and I think that's another pivotal stretch here, right? We're going into the Pac-12. You've got some national buzz. You're finally coming off of a year in which you won 8 games again. You beat some rivals. You got back to the postseason. But can you really strike now while the iron's hot? Can you break through and win 9+? Can you get to the conference title game? Maybe win a conference championship. At the very minimum, win a bowl game. You've lost 5 straight bowls, since winning that New Mexico bowl. So I want to see them take that next step. And I think that on paper, there's a lot to like about the possibility, but the history has us all, waiting for the other shoe to fall. And that's just kind of been what being a CSU fan has been in recent years. So we'll see how it all plays out. But I appreciate everybody rocking live with us. Shout out to everybody in the Toyota chat. Shout out to our super producer, Tiff. I'll also be on the Av show later on today. Much love to everybody in Ram Nation. Thanks for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use the code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order.
We all silly like the mayor.